I'm gonna wait for 2 minutes for the turbo cool to take place, and it's getting a little real warm here. It takes me back to the time when there was no split AC, right? And I used to record without the AC. There are the creative workflow videos on the main channel where you can see I'm really sweating and it's tough times, but it's good to be in a position where there's the split AC now and I can have it running in the background. I'm in a position I can wear a jacket and shoot videos. I couldn't even imagine doing that earlier. Good morning, welcome back to In the Khud. This is September 5, 2022, 8:12 a.m. and I'm doing things a little differently today. I'll have to, for context, go through the weekend. In the last episode on Friday, I did say that the weekend's gonna be primarily dad's work, and that's what it was supposed to be. So Saturday, the whole day was 11 episodes of show 2. Of course, with a little more sleep, so couldn't do anything else other than that. The same was the plan for Sunday as well, which was yesterday, to do like 10 to 11 episodes of show 2 because it's kind of intense to work on these shows now. So earlier for me 11 episodes would be nothing, but now 11 episodes is, I would say, equivalent to an effort of 20 episodes or so. That was a plan for yesterday, but for just half an hour I thought I should revisit the RD com setter script just to understand it a little better, and then that's where I got stuck with this keyword in JavaScript, and I went on to YouTube to search a few random videos here and there. But the kind of person I am, I need a course, I need a structure, I need a format, I need to learn things from the ground up. Obviously went to Udemy and I came across this beautiful course called Advanced JavaScript Topics, and the reason I could not document this yesterday evening is because there was Ganpati Visarjan 5th day, so there was too much noise from outside world. There would be no meaning in the video if I had recorded a sort of background noise. In JavaScript you're always dealing with objects, except for the primitive data types, strings, numbers, booleans, undefined nulls, and so essentially everything is an object. And the thing that really clicked with me was the fact that functions are actually objects. Functions have two things, code and call. These additional things a function can do in addition to a standard JavaScript object. This is very basic stuff. A function is attached to an object, we call it a method of that object. Okay, now first class functions, we can pass functions around when calling a function. So for example, variable sum is a function x comma y, variable run is function. Okay, variable run is function, and inside function we give parameters of function a comma b. Now here you could just write this whole thing, you could copy it and paste it here. That's what it's meant by first class functions. Every function, in addition to the parameter or parameters that are passed into it, also receives two additional parameters, this and arguments. This is important. This returns the object that the function is referring to. This changes depending on how we invoke functions. Arguments display an array like of arguments passed while calling the function. Now arguments is not a replacement for passing parameters in the function declaration itself. They're useful in case when you have a function and you want to return something for all the values that are passed as arguments during the call of a function, as in you don't know the number of input parameters there can be. Let's say there's a generic sum function, right? And you want to add all the input parameters that are passed into it. So you don't know how many inputs are going to be. There could be 2, there could be 3, there could be 4. So that's where you can use arguments. Okay, methods of invoking or calling a function. Invoking is same as calling. Okay, you can call a function normally as a function. You can call a function as a method where you say obj, the object name dot function. That's how you call it, and then in it with parentheses. You could call a function as a constructor using the new keyword, or you could call it indirectly using call and apply. There are two ways of creating objects. One is object literal and the other is object constructor. Object literal, we do variable obj is equal to, then curly brackets, first name like key value pairs like we normally do. Object constructor, let's say variable obj is equal to new object, then obj dot first name is Rajmeer. This is the other way we can do the same thing. Now understanding this a bit, let's consider variable obj is this object. Okay, here we can add more properties to the object using the dot operator. It's not that you have to define everything, every single property that the object has here in the definition itself. You can come in here and say obj dot greeting, let's say that's a function you want to add, is equal to function console.log hello, console.log arguments, console.log this. Now this here returns the object obj that the method belongs to. Basically, to simplify, like completely simplify it, what this does is it refers to the object that it belongs to. And in most cases, if it is a normal function, that means it's not part of or associated with an object, in which case the function is actually called a method. So in normal cases in your code, whenever there's a function and you see the word this is basically referring to the global object. Since everything inside JavaScript is a function and is an object, and function itself is an object, by default a function which is not a part of an object, belongs to the global object. By global object, I mean at the very top, when we're declaring global variables, or we're declaring global functions, or we're declaring anything that is global, could be a constant, could be anything. That is the object for every function by default. In case of when you put things on the console, the global object for the browser is window. If the function is actually a method, that means it belongs to an object. What happens in that case is when you use this, then this dot is not referring to the global object. It is referring to that particular object that we're talking about. What is this going on? Bruh. Okay, that is all that had to be understood. For example, here, since obj.greeting is equal to function, now this function is attached to this object called obj, which we have created. That's why this function is not a normal function, it's a method. In this case, when I say console.log this is gonna return the object which we defined here called obj and not the global object. You can remove properties from an object by using delete keyword. So delete obj.lastName removes the attribute. Now, how to check if a certain property exists in the object or not? Using in. So last name of property in obj, it should return true or false. Or you can say obj dot has own property first name, returns true. Now there's a very crucial difference between these two methods, and I'll go about it later. This is determined at runtime. The position of the function in the code does not determine what the value of this becomes. How that function is invoked or it is called determines that. If you're using obj dot to call it, or you're using just the function to call it. And if it is a method, you cannot just call it like that. If it belongs to an object, you have to use obj dot to call it, which is very obvious. This is not a function, though it is established when the function is invoked. This binding can be implicit, set by JavaScript engine, or explicit, set by you. Examining this with normal function invocation, there's a variable called name equal to a string called global. Now function 1 is function name is equal to fun1 console log from fun1 this dot name. Now this will return the global object, and this dot name will return global, as you can see in the output here. Global object window for browser and then global. What would mean exactly the same is this dot fun1. Now instead of fun1 here, if I just wrote this dot fun1, the output would be exactly the same. Why? Because for functions which are not a method, that is not belonging to an object, the default object is the global object, and that can be referred to by using this dot. I think I've gone very deep in trying to understand, explain it, but it was difficult for me to wrap my head around it, so I have to make sure that I don't forget it ever again. That's what this video is going to serve for. Okay, what is this? When you declare a variable in the global space, we can say that we have assigned that to the global object, because everything in JavaScript is actually an object. What if the function is not invoked from global space? Let's say we call it here. Still it doesn't matter, because there is no object associated here. This function 1 is declared in global space. It is part of that global object. This is referring to the global object. Only thing that you have to be concerned about is there an object definition somewhere to which these functions belong, and hence that object is used to call these functions. In that case, the value of this will be that object context and not the global context. Variable name is global, okay? Variable obj, this is an object that we've declared. Name obj1, fun1 is a function. From fun1 and obj1, this dot name. Now here, what should the output be? The output should be, this will come the way it is when we call obj.fun1. How are we invoking, or how are we calling the function? We're calling it obj.fun1. Hence this here will refer to this function called fun1, and this dot name will be referring to obj1 and not global. That's why we took the same variable name here, just to bring out the fact that here, because we are using an object, this is referring to the object and not the global object. From fun1 and obj1, that's the output. This is the object, okay, console log this, and this dot name is obj1. It is how it is invoked, not where it is defined. You could use it the way you want to, as long as you're calling it with obj dot fun1 fun2, it's going to refer to that same object. An important concept here is of prototype in JavaScript. Every time an object is created, another object is automatically assigned to it called the prototype, and there can be prototype chains up to the root prototype. Okay, for that prototype can also have an object prototype, which can also have an object prototype, until we get to the final root prototype for JavaScript. Object can mean functions, arrays, etc. as well. Now let's say on console I define an empty object, obj is equal to this. Now when you call this and you twirl this down, by the way, if you want to know more about an object on the console, you just type dir and then that object inside brackets. So then you see prototype object. Let's say we have a variable array which is having elements 1, 2, 3. You just call it ARR. Okay, you're gonna get 3 here, you're gonna get length, and then you're gonna have prototype called array 0. When you twirl this open, you will have all the things, all the methods associated with the array object that you can use. So we have concat, copy within, entries, every, fill, find index. It's kind of like a guide. You can use whatever you can do with it. Then you keep scrolling down. Finally, you will get to this prototype object, which is a root object. That is for every object in JavaScript. Now, as I said above somewhere, crucial difference between toString in object, like let's say a method in object, and obj.has one property. Method in obj returns true even if the method can be found anywhere in the object prototype chain. As long as it's there in the chain, you say in obj, it will return true. But obj.has own property, bracket the method, this will return true only if we have actually defined that method or that object inside this particular object. Otherwise it will be false. Now inside console, pressing dir object allows you to look at the object in more detail. Prototype included. So I think that pretty much sums up my Sunday. This is what I was doing the whole day yesterday. It was kind of boring, like this entire thing, but as it is, I want to learn JavaScript and object-oriented programming from a very fundamental level up, because that will be very, very helpful. These are just fundamental programming concepts. These are not even, some parts of it are JavaScript specific, and that helps me because After Effects scripting is in JavaScript. So I can like correlate my ideologies and understand things better. But just understanding the fundamentals is always a good thing to do. That's what I'm doing here. I also want to like dive into learning more about, let's say, the frameworks of JavaScript. So React, Node is just fun to learn. So why not? 20 minutes. I don't know how long this is going to take to edit. Now another crisis that I'm facing right now is internet is not working. I don't know why. It's just a pain. So even if I edit the video now, which I am going to anyway in the next half an hour, I won't be able to upload it. So I'll probably upload both the videos together in the evening, and then that, looking forward to how the day goes. I'll catch you in the evening with another video for In the Khud to upload on the same day, hopefully, if internet stays. Peace.